Let me move on to the second facet. This long-winded worship leader got me late in both services. But he did a good job. The second facet. When we get this facet of getting the word out and begin to flesh it out, when we get that right, then the second almost automatic result of capturing God's vision will be numerical increase. When we understand that our role is not inside the church but outside the church, then the almost automatic result is numerical increase. The truth is that a properly embraced vision should and will cause the size of the church body to increase. And I'm not so sure that any pastor is worth his or her salt if they don't have a vision for numerical growth, if they don't see the church growing. Because this salvation message and church growth go hand in hand. How can you go out and see the lost saved and not give them a place by which they can come in and be discipled? Pastor Madonna said in one of the messages when I was gone, she said, we are like spiritual moms who abort their babies. In the sense that we go out and we see people saved and then we do nothing to disciple them or bring them along the path. And so we just let them out there to die. And that's not what the scriptures teach by any means. You know, and what the truth is, you know, people say, well, I don't necessarily believe in church and I don't support the church and I can be a Christian and not attend church and all that stuff. And I'm not even going to get into that argument today. I just want to know that I want you to know that the scriptures teach that there's got to be a place to disciple those who are being saved. You know, Jesus said that we were to go and make disciples. He didn't say we're to make just converts, not just see people saved. He said we're to make disciples and we're to train them in the things of the Lord. Now, where do you think these folks who give their lives to Christ and are saved are going to get discipled? If we go out onto the streets and we begin to win people to the lost, win the lost to Jesus, where do you think they're going to get discipled? Guess what? In the church. They're going to come to a place where they can be trained and taught the things of God. And so it's the mission of the church to disciple people. And this means every member of the church has to be in it for the long haul. There can be nobody sitting on the sidelines. Everybody has to be pulling their weight. That's why everybody needs to be stepping up, taking in a small group or a cell group or a Sunday school class or someplace in ministry. You need to be stepping up, linking your arms with somebody else, saying, I want to bring you along in your journey with Jesus Christ. Otherwise, you are disobeying the Great Commission to make disciples. You can't somehow trust that to everybody else or somebody else. You've got to take up your role, pick up the slack. Because disciples are not made overnight. It's an ongoing process. You start today. A week or two later, you're still discipling. A month or two later, you're still discipling. A year or two later, you're still discipling. No matter how far you go, how long you live, you are still learning about the power and presence and the authority and the desires of Jesus Christ. That's why I said this vision will not be carried out in a week or a month or a couple of years. It is going to take us a lifetime to put on the nature of Christ and to begin to disciple those who will come after us as well. You know, the church is an almost automatic response. When discipleship is a lifelong process, church growth is almost an automatic response to living God's word out among those outside of the church, seeing them saved and helping them grow in their spiritual walk. However, let me be very quick to tell you that I do not see, and I think we cannot see, growth as an end in itself. Growth is not so we can have 50 or 100 or 500 individuals more than last year, because that's not in keeping with the biblical pattern, not just hoarding people. The biblical pattern for growth is so that we can affect change in the church culture and in the culture of our community. It was said of the early disciples that they turned cities upside down with the message of the good news. The disciples came into an area, they proclaimed Jesus, they laid hands upon the sick, they carried away hankies to those who needed to be healed, they raised the dead, whatever was necessary, they cast out demons, and the city officials were saying, these people have come into our cities, they're turning cities upside down. Wouldn't it be good witness to those of Port Orange, if they came and said, you know that church that sits up there on the north side of Clyde Morris, they're turning this city upside down. That we were that engaged in ministry, they began to realize that that church was making that kind of a difference, that we're making that kind of impact upon our community. What we find is that the biblical pattern for growth is so that we can change the church's culture, our culture, and also the culture of our community. You know, the truth is, as the church grows, we're going to change. And there's going to come a day when you don't know everybody's name who walks through the front door. And we'll all have to wear name tags saying who we are. It's all right if you don't know everybody, can't give everybody a hug, can't somehow greet everybody by name. It's going to come to that if we are going to obey the call of God. But in addition to that, it's going to change the culture of our community. Whenever Jesus came into a community, he left the city changed. Whenever the disciples came into a city, the city was changed. So it's one of those things where our very action is going to change our city. Jesus seldom, if ever, gave emphasis to numbers for the sake of numbers. However, he did see the value of adding individuals to the kingdom so that the common day culture was transformed for the better. You look at our culture, we say, why is it going downhill? Why does it seem like we're just getting worse and worse? Why? Because Christians have gone inside their church walls and are being bold outside those church walls. And so we are seeing a negative effect upon our culture. And when the Christians come alive in their spirit and go outside their church walls, guess what? The culture will begin to turn back to a thing of righteousness. Now is a time for us to be adamant about taking Jesus to the streets. So any increase God might give us has to be for the purpose of winning the lost, discipling the lost, to place people in ministry and make them ministers of the message of Jesus, bringing hope, salvation, and healing, and the promise of an eternal future to those who need Christ. You know, somehow most churches have not come to this understanding. They've not connected with the fact that size and greater ministry go hand in hand, and how it becomes a bit of a snowball effect where ministry impacts growth, and then growth impacts ministry, and it kind of has to keep on unraveling. And it's why many churches are in decline or plateaued. If you do a study of churches today, most of them are in decline or plateaued. And it's simply maintaining the status quo. And we may also fall into that if we're not careful, if we're not determined to do otherwise. We've got to get to a place where we say, I'm not going to allow our church to just remain the same way. I'm going to go win somebody to Jesus. I'm going to bring them so that we might disciple them in the things of Christ. You know, many pastors and churches are gauging their success and effectiveness on the number of people they have in the pew, and not the number of people engaged in ministry or the number of people outside the church. However, I am saying that any growth that comes and is not also engaged in practicing the works Jesus did is going to be short-lived. We'll see that roller coaster. God might add to us, but if we're not going to go back into our community and invest, then it's going to go back down. And I want to see that thing where God begins to add to us, and we begin to touch our community, and our church continues to explode as the message of the gospel continues to explode. You know, I don't see anywhere in the scriptures where we will be judged according to the size of the church we had or the size of the church I pastored, but rather by the way we spend our lives becoming like Jesus, doing the works he prepared for us, and helping others along the journey as well. And when we capture an understanding and vision of why God might give us an increase from, then we are positioned for numerical growth. When we finally capture the vision, it's not about just growing to add what some preachers say, butts in the pew. It's not that. It's about getting people engaged in ministry to touch a lost generation.